Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back another video from Tekking 101. We're on a One Piece video, and I found here's a video called The Will of D Explained. Now, I don't know if this is actual pure explanation, because I've seen comments where people have said even now people don't understand what the Will of D actually is. I don't know if this is an actual theory video, but I'm very intrigued to, see what he has to say, because I really want to know what this is. There's so much mystery and intrigue within the world of One Piece. This is definitely one of them. So let's see what Tekking 101 has to say on the Will of D, shall we? With the Will of D explained.
Alright everybody, this is going to be a big one. This is going to be one of the great mysteries of the One Piece series discussed today. I know you guys
so it's a discussion.
For a while. I know I've been waiting for a while to discuss this. I just hit 200,000 subs, so I think that's the most appropriate time.
Jeez, a hell of a lot more now.
When you're talking about any really popular series, any series that's garnered a lot of attention, you always have things that the fans can reference that sort of work as a symbol of solidarity, something that brings that fan base together.
Yeah, that's true.
Like something like
you know nothing, Jon Snow. Don't know the Doctor Who thing.
That only the real fans will understand it. It makes absolutely no sense out of context. Like the whole the cake is alive from Portal.
Yeah, man.
Really,
you don't get that until you
say that to most people,
you realize you've been lied to. You'll get cake at the end.
One Piece has that as well, but in the case of One Piece, it's not a phrase, it's not a quote. It is but a single letter of the alphabet.
D.
And that letter, as I'm sure we all know, is... No, it's not you. Get the hell out of here.
Aw, poor you.
That letter is D.
Hell yeah, it is.
D, or more specifically, the Will of D, is not something that I can just easily explain. I can just throw out a definition, because it's something that we know so little about right now in the 20-plus years that One Piece has been running.
It's crazy. It's nice to have a little mystery like that, though, the whole way.
One Piece in the form of a middle initial.
But people know of it.
Forms, but so far it's only been in characters' names. And
like the lady that Chopper was friends with said that it's the Will of D, and it's like, oh, okay.
And 4 of those people happen to be dead, and 3 out of those 4 are actually part of the same family, a mother, a father, and a son. So, damn, the D is pretty dark, basically. Now, of course, as you can imagine, after all these years, several questions have arisen around the Will of D, but I feel like everything can be broken down to just 5 basic questions regarding it. We need to have these 5 questions answered before the end of the story if it's going to be of any big payoff for the fans. And I'm sure Oda already knows everything.
Probably. He's an absolute genius, to be fair.
Here are the 5 basic questions, okay? Number 1, what does the D
stand for? Right.
Yeah, what does it stand for? D. 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 It stands for D. D-E-E. Yeah, pretty self-explanatory. Number 2.
Good throwback to Purple Eyes. That's amazing.
Regarding the Void Century. Number 3, what significance does the D have for the
current storyline? Yeah, how's it affecting stuff?
How does the D get passed on, and what criteria is involved
in
passing it on? And number 5, where is all this D information found? Where is it?
Yeah, like where'd you go to learn it? Yeah.
Is it in some other location?
I like that. D. What does it stand for? D.
Plenty of other things that people have noticed about the D regarding, the characters that hold that initial. There's things that sort of like tie them together. Like one of those things is whenever they happen to die, they always happen to die with a big smile on their face. That's something that's indicative of the bearers of the Will of D. You had that with Roger, you had that with Ace. With Porcus D. Rouge, I don't think we actually saw her die, but the last scene, she died during childbirth, giving birth to Ace, and the last time we see her, she's cradling a baby Ace shortly before her death, and she is
all those D's all over the place. That's amazing.
One time where Luffy was about to get executed at Logtown, and he had a big old grin on his
smiling.
Face. So that's something that could, connect all the bearers of the Will of D together. But I think that's just more of something that's just aesthetically something that Oda wants to convey with the Will of D.
Quite possibly.
They all die with a smile on their face.
Yeah.
We're definitely going to get a reference to that, like why that is. But in terms of like the bigger picture and what it really means for the significance of the story, that's why I didn't include something like that. So let's just go through those 5 questions.
Yeah, do it. This is cool.
I don't have any answers for you. I don't claim to have any answers for you. All I have to claim is I got a bunch of D's. That's all over the place. So let's go through them and see what we can look at. All right. So question number 1, the big one is, what does it stand for?
Yeah.
D. It stands for D. Right, so there are two camps to this. Number one is it's an initial. It actually stands for somebody's name.
Yeah. You'd think, wouldn't you? Yeah. So what is the actual
passed on through
name?
the centuries as sort of like an inherited will.
Yeah.
You know, like this is my name, and I wanted to accomplish something during my lifetime, but I
like your middle name's always that. Like,
so I'm gonna pass down my
yeah, I was about to say my whole name,
initial
and I was like, no, I don't
next
want
generation.
to.
And if they can't do it, they're gonna pass it on to the next generation, and so on and so forth.
You always just give
until
the
we
first
eventually
initial of
arrive
that
at
middle
the
name, don't you?
storyline. So it could be actually somebody's name. Now, whose name could it be? I don't know.
We don't know,
Joy
yeah.
Boy? That's a thought.
Oh.
We know that the D originates during the Void Century, so that's
Yeah,
between 8 and 900 years ago. That was the span of the Void Century. That's when the whole Will of D came into vogue. You know, that's when it began. So if it is a name, if it is somebody's actual name, then it had to be somebody that lived during that time period.
During the
And we
Void
just
Century,
don't know
yeah.
a lot about that time period. I mean, it's not called the Void Century
For
for a
nothing,
reason.
yeah.
We know very little about it. And
Yeah,
we know very
exactly.
little, like, we
No
know
one knows,
things
like, anything about it,
we know
really.
that there were the 20 families of the world government got together and they made the world government immediately following the Void Century. So we know that there was an ancestor of the Nefertari family back then. We know there was an ancestor of the Doflamingo family back then and all that. We don't know anything about, we don't know any particular person that has actually been introduced that we've seen. We know their name. We know what they were about from that time period. We just don't know anything about it. Except for the only one that gets kind of closest to that is Joy Boy, and we don't even know anything about
That's
Joy
a mystery
Boy. We
as
don't know
well.
his real name. We don't know what he looked like. We just know that there was somebody during that time
Excuse
period
me.
that lived that had a connection with the poneglyphs, had a connection with one of the three great ancient weapons, Poseidon, who was a mermaid princess. Apparently, Joy Boy made a promise to the mermaid
come
princess,
back on
something
that, yeah.
involving Noah, that giant ship. He couldn't keep his promise. So, from what we've seen so far with that, it could be his name. It could be his initial. That's the
That'd be
reason, of
pretty
course,
cool,
that
like, yeah.
Oda did not just tell us what his real name is so far. He's
Oh,
keeping it a
mate, and that
mystery.
that'd
Joy Boy
be
could
cool
have
if that
in
is his
the
name that
of
they've been
D,
carrying on.
And it's because of something involving that promise that he had, that he decided to pass on his initial to his next generation, like his son or his daughter, and then it just kept going throughout the centuries. So that's one possibility. Now, if it isn't Joy Boy, if it is somebody's initials but it's not his, then we're just going to have to introduce a whole new character.
Yeah,
because we don't
definitely,
really know
yeah,
anybody
like,
from the Void Century,
it needs to be something that makes
other than,
sense.
like the ancestors of like Nefertari and Doflamingo and all the other families, as well as Joy Boy. Those are the only people we knew that existed during that time period, really. So yeah, that's one thing though, is that it's initial. Another one is that it's not an initial; it's just a word. That it stands for, just something straight up like deceiver or destroyer,
Maybe.
or something along those lines.
I don't think that'd
that is
be
what
it,
the D
though.
stands for.
Has
So
to be a
not really
name.
more of just like something indicating what the person who's holding that initial is going to do.
Right, okay.
So the way that Corazon stated it, when Corazon was explaining this to Law, because Law had the initial, but he had no idea what it was about.
Yeah.
That's something else we're going to touch upon later. Really, even the people that have
the name
initial
don't even know what it
really-
is,
Not
yeah.
everyone even knows what it's about.
Yeah.
Okay, so it might be one of those things that's tradition where it's being passed on, but even the people that are passing it on
Don't even know
idea
what they're
it
doing.
means.
Right,
It's just
okay,
like,
yeah, that's
you know,
intriguing.
My dad gave me this name, and my dad
No idea
his dad before
why.
gave him that name, and it's just something we've always done, and it's really important. So we got to keep passing it on, even though the meaning of it has long since forgotten. So it's. I don't want to say the name isn't important because we really want to know what it is.
It has
I really
to be.
hope Oda
Surely
doesn't do
it
that
has
kind
to
of
be
thing.
like.
You know, Oda reveals later on in the story, it's not what the actual D stands for is important. It's what the people that embody the will of D do. That is what is important. He could do something like
No,
that, but I'm really
don't
hoping
see
he
it. It's
doesn't.
like One
It
Piece
could be
being
like,
the
even though nobody
friends you
really-
made along the
it's been
way.
so long, nobody even remembers what the D stands for, but it's the fact that if you have it, you're going to complete this task, or you have the potential to complete this task.
Yeah, maybe.
But the way that Corazon explained it to Law was that those that have the D, those that carry the will of D, are the very enemies of God themselves. And so I'm sure he wasn't taking that in the literal context, like there's the gods of the One Piece world that are going to be coming down and,
Like
and
the
fighting
people
against
ruling
the
the
people that have
world,
D.
though.
Because we don't really know anything about the gods of the One Piece world. And no, that guy doesn't count.
Yeah, definitely.
What he was most likely referring to were the world nobles.
Yeah,
the Tenryubizu,
definitely. Yeah.
The divine dragons. You know, the
They
celestial
are
dragons, I guess
the
I should say.
people
That's
that are
a better
going to
translation.
uprise against the
These are
celestial
the ones
dragons
that are
and
at the
that.
top of the world world government. These are the direct descendants of the 20 families that began the government back during the Void Century. So most likely that's what Corazon was referring to. Those that have the Will of D are the enemies of the world government in its purest form. The purest core form of the world government, the way it started back during the Void Century, they are the enemies of that. Alright? So, it
destined to maybe potentially bring them down.
Alright, world government came to power 800 years ago, right at the tail end of the Void Century. There was a group of people, let's just call them maybe revolutionaries, like like an ancestor to the Revolutionary Army of something of that nature.
Led on to be Dragon in that,
the world government that opposed those 20 families getting together and making this thing. Like, we don't like that. We don't like what you're doing. We don't like what you're trying to do, and we're going to bring you down. And so they adopted the D as sort of like a symbol of their faction. And over the centuries, this faction began to split. It was maybe it began as one actual unit.
And it's being passed on throughout all those people that were part of it initially, right? Okay.
Scattered, and now it's more just a symbol to know that this group still exists. The will of these people still exists to try to take down the world government, because we know the world government is corrupted, and these are probably people that figured this out like at the very beginning. Like, we have to stop this before it gets too big, and they weren't able to stop it, and it eventually became the world government, took over the entire planet, or the majority of the planet, because there are countries that, like Wano, that are outside of it, but for the most part, they control the entire deal. And so, like I said, they might not even know what the D stands for. Maybe when they unify, like, we unify together under the banner of D, and it stood for destroyer or something, because we're going to bring down the government or something like that.
It has to be a really good reveal when this comes out eventually, doesn't it? My God.
It's what that group does, and the people don't even know. But because it's One Piece, because it's manga, because it's fiction, you know, it could be like, I don't want to say preordained destiny, but it could be like the people that bear the initial have an inherent desire to fulfill the goals and wishes of that group, whether
which
they
was passed
know it
on.
or not.
Yeah, unintentionally,
like Luffy is a bearer
following
of
it
the Will
through,
of D, and Luffy's not really all about, like, overthrowing the government. Luffy's not going around.
No, he's like, I'm going to be king of the pirates, woo! But his actions
sort of, like,
could be doing it.
Because the whole thing with Robin happened, and that made Luffy an enemy of the world government. It's not like Luffy did not pick a fight with the world government just because he
picked a
felt
fight
like it.
to save Robin, and then that made him an enemy.
Okay, I guess the world government's our enemy now. So even though Luffy's not actually directly trying to
He is
topple the government,
indirectly, like,
his path,
making himself an enemy to those that he is meant to maybe
with
against,
a
right?
confrontation involving them. The fact that he wanted to become a pirate to begin with, you know, and most of the people that bear the Will of D do turn to a life
his
of
granddad's
piracy.
in the
That was
Navy.
Roger,
It's like, whoa.
It was Ace. It was Luffy.
Is his granddad?
Dragon is
It
not
is
a
granddad,
pirate, but he's a revolutionary, which is kind of worse. He is part of a faction that really does directly oppose the world
The
government.
Celestial Dragons, yeah.
Rouge was not a pirate, but she did, she hooked up with Roger, who was a pirate, and Rouge didn't really care much for the government. But on the other hand, and Law is a pirate as well, but on the other hand of that, you also have two bearers of the Will of D that are actually part of the government, part of the Marines. You have Garp and you have Saul. Now, the thing with Saul that was interesting is Saul actually
left.
Saw what the world government was and saw what they were doing, and
felt like he needed to leave,
I don't like this. I don't agree with this. So once again, it seems like just inherently, even though
and Garp
Saul
even,
came
like,
out and said,
sometimes
Robin asked him, like, what does the D stand for?
He helped
and Saul was like, yeah,
Roger,
that
didn't
was
he?
just a name that my pappy and my mammy gave me back in the day. We don't even know it's been in my family for generations. We don't even know what it stands for.
He helped Roger back in the... Didn't he?
He still had this inherent, like, detest for the world government. He was like, this isn't right. Even though I worked for the Marines, I know this isn't right. I need to do something to stop this. Now, Garp is the odd duck in this whole thing, because he's been part of the Marines for decades. Ever since he was, like, Luffy's age, he was part of the Marines. And he's not even...
So this video might have been made before the reveal, then.
Garp, always doing stuff against the law. No, he's a he was a high-ranking member. He was a vice admiral. He's just a general. He was like an instructor.
Yeah, he helped
teaching the younger
Goldie Roger
generation.
against,
he could easily. He was offered the position
what are they called?
of admiral several times. Always turned it down. And he was always somebody that
when was it Kaido and Big Mom and all them, the other group of I can't remember, doesn't matter.
A quirky kind of dude. But he's never been a guy that's like, I'm going to topple the world government. Never been that with Garp.
Yeah, never against the world
It's even
government,
more
but again, yeah, it's just
because
interesting that he did help
family,
Roger
Monkey
Ruffalo.
D. Garp, Monkey D. Dragon, and Monkey D. Luffy. Garp is even more the odd man out because Luffy and Dragon, Luffy became a pirate and is an enemy of the world government, and Dragon became the head of a revolutionary army that's direct goal is to overthrow the
Yeah,
freaking
take
government.
the Celestial Dragons down!
Then you have Garp, who has the initial, who is like, you know, not really, he hasn't really had any reference, like when Akainu killed Ace. You know, it was a moment there that he was like, I'm going to kill Akainu, but that wasn't because he was like, I'm going to wipe out the government or I hate the government. It was because he killed his freaking, his grandson.
Yeah.
Not his biological grandson, but
still.
essentially his grandson. So that's the reason Garp was pissed, but we've never seen like a direct thing where Garp is like, damn you, Gorosei, or anything like that. We've never had that. That's weird. Then there's Blackbeard. I forgot to mention him. Blackbeard is also something that is, you can take the D in a different way, in a different context. You know, whereas, you know, Luffy doesn't directly try to, you know, topple the government and do anything like that. You have Blackbeard, whose goal seems to do that. His goal is much more...
He's very intriguing, my god.
Taking them down, much more violent, much more, you know, like, I'm gonna rule the world kind of thing. You know, that's sort of the way that Blackbeard is having it. Which, it's a different path than the one Luffy's taking, but it still seems to follow the basic will of D. You know, taking down the government. It's just Blackbeard's a little bit more bloodthirsty about it than Luffy.
Oh, yes he is.
And even with Law, you know, like, we're gonna take down Kaido, and we're gonna try to, you know, make this vacuum of power and stuff, and that's something that could upset the balance of powers. So yeah, it really is something that the will is inherited down. Everybody that bears this name,
has a
letter, or this
like
initial,
like
is someone that has,
like
an
without
opposition
thinking
to the world government.
reason to
It's
just like
regardless.
bring down like or affect
Very
what's controlling the
strange.
world.
Even Rouge, you know, Rouge we didn't get to see much of. I'm sure we'll probably get more of her maybe in a flashback someday. But even her, it's like going against the Marines, going against the world government in the sense of her own body. You know, like making sure that Ace stays inside of her for like, what was it, like 20 months or something, so that he's not discovered. You know, going against them in that respect. So she even though she wasn't a pirate in herself, she had her own opposition to that group. So that's what basically the will is, as far as we know. Right. So now moving on to that was basically questions 1 and 2. I both kind of tackled there. So let's go on to question 3.
What signals does he have for the current storyline?
Right. Of the D in the current storyline. Right. So we talked about, you know, maybe it was a faction, a group that fought against the world government then, 800 years ago. They tried to overthrow the government. They failed, so they had to carry it down till now. So I believe this is going to be, like, the story of One Piece is eventually going to be the moment where the D clan, if you want to call them, as this group, is going to eventually succeed, one way or the other. Now, it might not be as triumphant as you might think. The way you might be thinking about it, like, very triumphantly, like, Luffy and the Straw Hats, and Law is there, and then Dragon is there, and they all invade.
Boom, and they just take it all down, kick the door in, and just bam.
They take out the world nobles, and they're like, alright, the world government has been liberated, all this oppression is over now. You know, and it's the good guys that stand on top of it, you know, well... Calling Dragon a good guy is, basically, you know, it's not all peaches and cream, alright? His goal...
He seems like the kind of guy that does what he
know,
needs to do to get the job done.
He will burn stuff down if he has to do it, you know? But it might not be like that. It might be something horrible. It might be a twist on that. It might be Blackbeard who enacts all this power and manages to destroy the government.
Could you imagine? That's pretty cool.
On top of the freaking mountain, and it's like, oh, that's not good. So it's like, oh yeah, the will of D got carried over, and they did succeed in toppling the government, but it's Blackbeard. It's something that's
like,
possibly even worse than the situation we had before this. This gets brought up. I keep combining the questions together, but the next question is, you know, how does the will of D get passed on?
Yeah.
You know, what's the criteria for that? And the reason
Who
I brought
does that and
up
how
was because there's characters like when you had that scene with Whitebeard, where he was talking to Marshall D. Teach Blackbeard, and he said, you know, you have the D, but you know, you're not the one Roger's waiting for. So it seems like it really is something that is just passed on just because of her tradition, and there's like false Ds out there, and there's true Ds out there.
Right, okay.
There's ones that will actually carry on the will, and then there's others that are not
Will
carrying
not,
it
but
correctly.
carrying the name.
And Blackbeard is certainly one of those false Ds. You know, like if there really was a D clan back in the day, I can imagine like Blackbeard's ancestor was the outlier of that group that wanted to do it. Like, yeah, we should do it. We should freaking destroy everything and then rule the earth with an iron fist. Maybe he was like that dude.
Maybe.
And all the other members of the
Like,
Will of D
no,
clan, like the
chill,
descendants of
dude.
Garp and Dragon and Luffy, and then there was like a descendant of Law, and they were like, okay, dude, calm down, you know, just chill out, bro. And then he's like, screw you guys. And then like his descendant turned out to be Blackbeard, who takes this really, you know, a different approach with it.
Quite possibly.
And Whitebeard said, you know, Roger's not waiting for you. So Roger would have been a carrier of like the true Will of D. And maybe there's something more to it than just taking down the government. Maybe there's that whole idea of dreaming, that whole idea of adventure that Roger embodied as the king of the pirates.
Seems like an
You know,
absolute
it's about
dude with
living
those
free. Maybe
flashbacks.
that's very
Like,
core,
wow.
that's what it is. World
What a
government
guy.
oppression, D-clan.
With
for
Odin?
freedom.
Was his name Odin from Wano?
That's all
Mate,
it is.
sick.
And
Let's
also,
Skype
I
here.
mentioned just now, like, the ancestors of the Monkey family, or the ancestors of Law's family. You know, it might not be that. It might not be a direct ancestor thing. It might just be, like I said, a title. You know, and so maybe it's like, you know, give this baby the D, even though, like, his ancestors had nothing to do with it. Maybe just give it to him so he can carry it on. Like, I see something in this infant or something like that. Because it's always a middle initial. It just seems kind of like it's tacked on, you know. The way Law described it, you know, his full name, I mean, we didn't know for a long time that Law even had it.
Marshall
But,
D.
you know,
Law?
Trafalgar Law. And later on he's found out my
Marshall
full
is from
name
Tekken.
Trafalgar
Trafalgar D. Law.
Watcher
Yeah.
Law. I got Watcher from my mother, and D was like a secret name that I'm not allowed to say.
Yeah, he was told to
Not
never
really
tell anyone they
implied
had it,
which part of the family. So, like, who named Law?
Marshall
You know,
Law
was
is
it
from
his dad?
Tekken, isn't it? Yeah.
Was it his mother that gave him the D initial? And did they know anything about it, or was it just something like a tradition, or was it somebody?
Weird,
else
isn't it? Because they're
that's like,
told
hey,
that they have the
you
name,
should
but
give
they
your child the initial D.
never.
I feel something
Yeah.
for this child. I think he's going to do things. You need to give.
He was
him that
told he had the
initial. It's very
D,
important.
but
Something
not to
along
let
those
anyone
lines, who
know.
knows? But yeah, that's the significance for the story right now. Like, it's going to be the big reveal of what it is, and then it's probably going to lead to the toppling of the world government by the end of the One Piece story. And also, we're going to find out, like, you know, maybe it was the direct ancestors of Luffy and Dragon and Garp and Law and Blackbeard that started this whole thing, and it's
Quite possibly.
carry it down toward today, or of something of that line. Or it might just be the symbolic thing I talked about. All right. And now, moving on to the fifth one, and this is something that you could probably already answer, sort of. It's just not something concrete, so I wanted to put it in here, and that's, where's all this information?
Where do you find out about it?
You
Yeah.
know, where do you find out about this?
The
D? You just
poneglyphs,
go to the freaking
or
library and look up D. You know, what is this all about? Now, it's heavily implied that these hints are scattered throughout the poneglyphs,
Yeah.
and most notably the Rio poneglyph. Whenever somebody, and I think it really it's directly connected to the Void Century. So you find the history of the Void Century, you're going to find
out about
the
the
Will of D.
door,
I
the
think
D,
it's really
yeah.
just, you know, you gather all the poneglyphs together, read the Rio poneglyphs, all 9 of those. Gather the 9 Rio poneglyphs together, read the full history, and then, like, if you're Robin, and you'll find out, like, okay,
Yeah,
that's
because obviously Rob's going to freaking know.
that's what we imply, and maybe that might be one way of finding out about it. But here's the thing, you know, that explains how Roger knew about it, because Roger obviously knew what it was. He even had that moment with Whitebeard, when Roger and Whitebeard had their last meeting on, like, next to that waterfall, and then all the cherry blossoms are floating in the breeze, and they're drinking sake. And Whitebeard's like, you know, what is the D anyway? And Roger's like, okay, I'll tell you. It's a story from way back when. So obviously Roger knew about it.
Right.
Whitebeard then knew about it. But he died. No telling if Whitebeard told it to anybody.
Quite possibly.
But is there another way of finding out about this? Is the only people that knew about it were the people that read the Rio poneglyphs? And also keep in mind, Robin has been studying the poneglyphs for years, literally years, and she's read all these poneglyphs. I don't know if Robin has ever directly read one part of the Rio poneglyphs. Perhaps she did. Maybe the ones that had the ancient weapons. Maybe it's broken up, like, because we know there's 9 Rio poneglyphs. So maybe it's broken up like there's 3 Rio poneglyphs, each referring to the ancient weapon. And then there's like 1 or 2 poneglyphs that talk about the Will of D. And then there's like a few others that talk about, like, you know, what went down during the Void Century. So I would like to see that, I would like to think, anyway, that at this point in the story, Robin has read at least one Rio Poneglyph, and she still knows nothing about the Will of D. So there might be another way of finding out about it. I'm just like leaving the possibility open. Hey, maybe Blackbeard knows what it is.
Maybe he does, actually. That'd be quite intriguing. Whoa.
Like, he's one of the few people that actually know. Whitebeard knew about it. Blackbeard was part of
his crew.
So
yeah. Oh, mate. Whoa.
Think about it this way. Whitebeard has that meeting with Roger. Hey, Roger, yeah, there's this guy on my crew named Marshall D. Teach.
Ooh.
What's the D all about?
That's maybe why I asked.
We have the scene where Roger tells him straight out what the Will of D means. We don't know, maybe not what it actually stands for, but what the meaning of it is.
Yeah.
Don't you think that maybe Whitebeard, after leaving that meeting with Roger, going back to his crew,
would do something about having Blackbeard there?
Yeah, Captain, what's up, you know? I talked with Roger about that Will of D. You know what he told me? And you'd think Whitebeard would have told it to Blackbeard before he knew what Blackbeard was really all about.
Yeah.
And so Blackbeard actually knows what
and
it is.
Is acting upon it.
Oh, say ha ha ha. You know,
yeah, that's a...
possibly, but he's like the only one I can think that might actually know it, because Whitebeard knew it.
Yeah.
Luffy obviously doesn't know. Law obviously doesn't know. Garp and Dragon might know. And then, Ace, Ruse, Saul, Roger, they're all dead. So that's pretty much
that
so
is a sound theory there.
The ones that are the most
like Blackbeard knows because Whitebeard knew, and he was part of his crew, and that's why he's doing what he's doing, to try and maybe actually act upon it, like, in... I don't know, because, like you're saying, if they're meant to be, like, against the head government and that, he's, like, trying to get that power, just, like, really go quite literal with it.
When Luffy defeated Doflamingo, when Luffy, like, King Kong the shit out of Doflamingo and cracked the freaking town in half,
Mate.
Law was sitting there watching Doflamingo fall, and he was remembering the line that Corazon said, those that carry the Will of D are the enemies of God.
Yeah.
He was like, damn straight. So that's something that maybe Law has a little bit more. He cares about what it actually stands for more than Luffy does. Also, something else that's interesting, and this is just kind of something that's maybe a parallel to it, is that they say, the bearers of the Will of D are enemies of God, and Luffy, literally, like, he fought against Eneru, who called himself God.
God,
Not only did Luffy defeat Eneru, there was the whole thing where Luffy's Devil Fruit was the natural enemy of it,
yeah.
Fruit. So in that context, it really was. He was the natural enemy of God.
Oh, God, yeah.
So, that was just a weird thing. I don't know, maybe that's going to be referenced later on. Eneru's up on the moon, and he's got...
Maybe, like, enemies of, like, people that see themselves as God.
It might be written in more than one place, is what I'm getting across. It might be in the Rio Poneglyphs. It might also be up in the ancient city on the moon, like what it is.
Mate, we ain't even at the moon yet.
Most likely existed before, probably even predating the Void Century. And so Eneru might, if he ever is reintroduced back in the story, he might know
has to be at some point.
Oh
my God.
Luffy, I understand what that D means in your name now, and I understand how you were able to defeat me. Something along those lines.
Yeah.
But yeah, so for the longest time, like the last time it was referenced with any significance was during the flashback between Law and Corazon. But beyond that, it's one of those things that Oda's very sparse in the referencing.
He's such a good writer. He's so good at like keeping everything like minimal but effective.
And that's also along the lines of everything I can think about the Will of D and what it could mean later on in the story. I would like to think there's a point where maybe Robin finds out about it and explains it to Luffy.
That'd be cool.
Or whenever Luffy meets up with Dragon.
Has to. Like, the whole point of her joining was the fact that she had all that stuff going on with her history and the Poneglyphs and that.
He's the Marine. He's the one taking orders from the world government. And that's like what he wants to do. It seems like this is my life. And he was even to the point where
unless he's there to protect, like, the people that are actually most effective for...
Garp found out about what it was, and he rejected. He's like, I don't want to be part of this. Maybe Garp was like, my goal is to destroy the world government with this name. But maybe Garp was like, if the world government falls, that's not going to be good for anybody. It might not be the best situation right now having it, but it's better than the alternative of if there's no world government. It's better to have some, lesser of two evils kind of thing. So maybe that's why Garp was so gung-ho about joining the Marines. And maybe that's, hey, this is something else. Maybe it's like a domino effect. Maybe Garp's role was to push the Marines so hard on maybe Dragon and Luffy his son and grandson respectively, that they ended up being the biggest players. You think of that?
Oof.
Like Garp rejected it. Like, I'm gonna reject this. Just screw it. I'm not going against the world government. I'm gonna be a Marine. And then he, you know, has Dragon as his son. He's like, you're gonna be a Marine too. And then Dragon leaves and becomes a freaking head of the Revolutionary Army.
Yeah.
The one that's the most likely to take down the world government. And then he has his grandson.
So he's
Luffy.
unintentionally
You're gonna be a Marine.
added
And
to
Luffy
the
runs
Will
away
of
from
D,
these
right?
most notorious pirates in the planet.
Yeah.
And that was Garp's role. It's like that preordained destiny
Ripple
shit,
effect, yeah.
Which I'm not against it completely. I just hate that trope whenever it's like, you are the child of prophecy. You must complete this task. You have.
And they just go, oh, okay, cool. Yeah. Like, this stuff which is, like, really subtly done.
800 years ago said you do. I hate when the whole prophecy, child of destiny trope is done, but if it's done in, like, a clever way like
Really,
that...
really clever. If it is like that, that's sick.
Garp's role was not to specifically do anything himself against the
But he
government.
unintentionally
His role
has,
was to
like,
have
birthed
a
the
son,
guy
and
that's
then
then
that
gonna
son was
give
supposed to have
birth
another
to...
son
Well, not give
that
birth
was supposed
himself,
to
but,
be
like,
the
yeah.
biggest players in taking it down.
Yeah.
That was Garp's role. So that's a clever
Oof.
way of looking at it. But maybe that's not going to be the case. Maybe Garp has a role that he doesn't even know yet.
Maybe.
World government's going to do something, and Garp's like, I can't take this anymore. I gotta deliver the fist of justice. So that could be another thing too. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video.
Yeah, that's close.
About, the D's.
Nah.
Got a lot of D's here. Hey, if you can say how many D's are in this video, you'll win a 1,000. No, I'm not doing a contest. I don't even know how many are out here. I got so lucky. I was shopping around for D stuff today. And as luck would have it, in my dollar store, I found a bunch of D sticky notes, 1 pack left.
What?
And I'm like, I was meant to have this.
That. That's the Will of D passed on.
You know, I realize what I'm saying is so sexually, you reference it so much, but you figure after a while it just gets, you know, like boring. Like,
Yeah, the same
I'm
joke
sure there's
over and
plenty
over.
of comments already below that are like, oh, Tekking wants the D. But after, like, what was this, like half an hour?
Yeah.
Of me mentioning the D, and be like, okay, there's no point anymore. But I'm still looking forward to your. Maybe you'll get clever with the comments. You gotta get really clever. You gotta bring it to the table. You can't just comment like Tekking can have my Will of D. That's not clever. You gotta do something clever. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video.
Did.
This will be Tekking 101. Tech D 101. Yeah, that's how that works. Right along with Mad D Monk Arouge and Buggy D Clown. And if you want to hear more about that, I made separate videos about all that and everything. Oh, hey, you know what? Before I go, one more thing. When I did my Rouge video last week, I said, oh, he might be the Mad D Monk. And people are like, that doesn't make any sense because that's his epithet. That's not his name. I'm like, well, they did the same thing with Roger. Roger's full name was Gold D. Roger.
Yeah, they said Gold Roger.
And the government just took it like, oh, Gold Roger. So
yeah.
the D really was his Gold was his epithet, and the D was part of the epithet. So there you go. And just one last minor piece of trivia before I go, finally. It's dragging on. The first person to ever reference the Will of D in the story was actually Dr. Kureha.
I said that at the start, yeah.
She was the first person to ever bring it up.
It seems the Will of D is still alive, yeah.
She's 1 year old now, so obviously she wasn't alive during the Void Century.
Yeah, but she knows of it, yeah.
She was one of the oldest human characters in the entire story so far.
I said that!
Would have
I really need to pee, so I'm going to
knowledge
really
about the
sign out
just
quick on the
random
end of this.
Obviously, she can't read poneglyphs or anything,
But she knows of
I'm
it.
sure maybe a patient she treated back in the day.
Maybe
somebody
mentioned it,
referenced
or yeah.
Not
We need to get a
everybody
flashback
even
back on
knows
that.
about the Will of D. It's not something that's a common thing in the One Piece world.
No, but she knows.
Most citizens don't know anything about it. And Kureha is attending reveries, so maybe she'll bring it up there. You know, hey, is that Will of D still giving you problems there, government boys? Glug, glug, glug. And they're like, oh, you're a bitch. Okay. But that's it. That's it. We're done. Okay, we're done talking about the D. For now. You guys have a great night. Signing out.
Boom. Good video, good discussion, good questions brought forwards, and yeah, still not explained. I don't know when this video was made, so yeah, I don't know if he actually seen all the other stuff with Odin and that, but anyway, thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of the video upload, links in the description of the Patreon page. $1 a month is all I ask to help support the channel. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe, and leave comments down below. Let me know what you watch future videos. I'll see you guys next time. I really need to pee. Bye.